I want to know even more, Elliot. This is so fascinating to me. Like,
Awesome.
I'm thinking about these stories that can be manufactured and spun however necessary. So, kind of twofold question.
Sure.
What does someone like yourself, somebody like your firm, how do you go about uncovering the truth behind those stories, like in everyday real life practice? How do you get to the bottom of what's really happening as part of diligence? And also wondering if you have any kind of case study stories you might be able to share with us.
Sure. So the way that you get to the bottom is that you've seen so many different plays being ran, stories being told, and you check the data on them to know how to quickly get to the facts so that you can quickly move from story to sort of verifiable piece of data to believability, yes, no. So what does that mean in abstract? And then I'll give you sort of a case study example. In abstract, I often find people say things like, I have a market leading product. I sell widgets into manufacturing, but I have a market leading product. So once I hear market leading product, right, what that means in business is I'm able to sell my product at a higher price than my competition because they're market lagging. So that means my gross margin should be higher than the industry average. So now, seller, let me see your an income statement. Let me look at your gross margin. Is it higher than the average in the industry? And you can look at EBIS World or other sort of data sets to figure out what the average gross margin is. And if it's not, then the seller told me it's market leading. The financials don't prove that out. Now, I don't necessarily kick the deal out, but I sort of know that this person is willing to say things that aren't qualified in the data. So I'm on one side of the world in business buying, right? Whereas if somebody sort of tells me a bunch of things and I check a bunch of things and they all come out true, I feel a different way. So how does that work in practice? So I was helping two guys in Connecticut who wanted to buy a business a couple hours south of Atlanta. And one had worked in sort of public market investing, so he had looked at like, Coca-Cola or Home Depot's financials, so sort of understood that. The other one was a teacher, and so not very familiar. And they were buying an HVAC company, and a lot of the things that I'm talking about came up. So the seller was the owner and CEO. His wife was the bookkeeper. She said she was part-time, but we had to sort of check to see what part-time meant, because part-time meant we're reallocating her full salary to cost or half. And so we went through that process to see, well, if I can call her at 8 o'clock, at 12 o'clock, at 2 o'clock, at 5 o'clock, and she's always at the office, that's not really part-time, right? And so you check it to see if it's true, and then you adjust your idea of profit and cash flow commensurately. Another issue that we had, I think, was we were told that a lot of their business was contractual and repeat, and people always use the word recurring. Whenever I hear recurring, I'm like, show it to me. And so when we looked in the numbers, it was repeat, meaning people did business with them on a repeat basis, but it wasn't like a SaaS company online where I'm paying some, like Spotify, $5 a month. It wasn't a machine of that nature. And so those kind of things had us go from, let's call it X dollars of cash flow, and we adjusted to some, 0.8, 0.9, whatever percentage of cash flow. And the purchase price ended up being lower as a result of some of the diligence that we were able to help the customer do. They also felt more comfortable because looking at the financials and understanding the seller mentality in these type of deals requires a decade of experience. It requires somebody who's been around the block, because keep in mind who you're questioning. So it'd be like me questioning Jay and Carol about this podcast. Like, they know so much more than I do. If I'm a first-time person doing this process, there's no way I'm going to get to know your business enough to be able to buy it the first time doing the full process. Like, now the 100th time I've talked to sellers about their company, now I'm very efficient and good. In fact, at this point, I just have conversations with sellers for a day, and I'll go through a 50-item checklist and never ask like a direct question or a sequential check off next. And then I'll go home and I'll be able to answer the 50-question checklist, but the seller will feel like it was just a conversation. And so that's sort of how you do it, and then an example of how it was done.
Yeah, I love that. And it's just like due diligence with everything else, and I know I always go back to real estate, but a lot of our listeners are real estate investors. You walk into somebody's house, if they have a stain on the carpet, it's not hard to, it's a lot easier to hide that stain if you're the seller than it is for you to find that stain, because what are you going to do? Are you going to move every piece of furniture? Are you going to look through every drawer and every cabinet? Are you going to open every door and every drawer? Well, in real estate, maybe we don't do that because to replace the carpet isn't that much. But in business, this could be the make or break. And so you do have to move every piece of furniture. You do have to open every drawer. You do have to look in every space. And that's why for business, due diligence, like you said, can be a 3, 4, 5, 6 month process versus in real estate where it may be a few days, maybe a week.
Yeah. And to make an analogy, the carpet may or may not break the deal, but if the foundation's off or shifting, then that's different. If the house next door is about to be condemned and that will change the value of your sort of real estate, that's significant. If there's certain things that I think even in real estate are so fundamental to the value that you have to check them. The other thing, I compare myself to like a home inspector if you're doing sort of residential real estate, or a good appraiser on the commercial side. That person's worth their weight in gold because they're the one that's like, that smells like something different in the house. I've smelt that before. Show me the furnace. Oh, the furnace is on its last leg. But like, I may not have been able to do that, but that person did it right away. Or, hey, I'm stepping on this feels a little faulty. Let me go check the foundation here. And so it's worth its weight in gold to get someone who understands those things very, very well, because you're right. In due diligence, you get such a small window relative to the history of the business to determine if this business is what you say it is. And you know that you could tell a story about your house, or let's even go to cars. I use cars as a great analogy. You know, you could tell a story all day about your Chevy Impala that's got all the records in the dashboard and all the brand new tires and look how clean it is on the inside. But, you know, a real good person in diligence will be able to pop the hood and take a look at the engine, which is really what's driving the value of this car, and be able to critique it. And you need to be sure that either you can do that or you're working with somebody who can do that.